Hi, I'm Lexi Sims, and this is Understanding Students with ADHD. So, ADHD is an attention defect hyperactivity disorder. So, it's neurodevelopmental disorder that usually occurs in children, but it can occur in any age group. So, there are adults with ADHD, but usually it's spotted in kids, and kids are more likely to have it. So the age of the diagnosis is usually or around 7, and symptoms first appear when they're like between ages 3 and 6. So in 2018, I found a lot of different numbers for this, but in 2018, my site said that 6.4 million of US children ages 4 to 7 were diagnosed with ADHD. So there has been a major increase of ADHD in the United States over the past 8 years. It has actually increased by 42%. And I found some different statistics that I thought were very interesting. So, children in households with English being their main language or like their first language, they're 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD as a child that English is their second language. So then in Kentucky, Arkansas, Louisiana, Indiana, Delaware, and South Carolina, they actually have the highest ADHD rates, which is kind of interesting to look at because they're all on the one side of the state. It's all It also stated that 6.1% of American children are being treated for ADHD today, meaning that, going back to that, not all children with ADHD are treated, and whether that be the parent's choice or different circumstances making them not be treated, that's just a really low percentage. So contributions to the increase in numbers. So these kind of go along with just like better technology and like new technology coming about and coming of age, being able to do different tests and come up with different tests to be able to identify if a child does have ADHD. So better health access to health insurance is also, as well as mental health treatment through the Affordable Care Act. And one of the articles I read talked about how a lot of kids are diagnosed with ADHD, but it's not actually ADHD, it's just they have the symptoms. So it's easier to say that they have ADHD than going in and basically continuing to research and find out what's actually the underlying problem. So some symptoms of ADHD. There are a lot of symptoms actually. Here are a few. Trouble concentrating or focusing, difficulty staying organized, forgetful, difficulty sitting still, acting out, hyperactivity, lack of focus. These all can be shown and seen in the classroom. Kids, a lot of kids can't stay focused, but that doesn't mean that they have ADHD, sorry. And at the age when symptoms are commonly shown, kids do have a tendency to run around and be very hyper or jump off, bounce off the walls type thing, knock toys over. But you kind of have to continue to look, even if you do think that there is any chance of them having ADHD. You kind of just have to keep an eye on it, because just because they do these things or show these symptoms doesn't mean that they need to be treated for it. Another thing about like treatment is if there is a kid that's hyper and very full of life and likes to be a part of things, if you start to treat them, they may not like react the best to that treatment. So kind of going back to this 6.1% of American children are being treated, this percentage may be low because kids tried to be treated or they were being treated, and then their parents chose to discontinue it because it was showing a big difference in their personalities and making them dull or making it just making them a whole different person from what they were. Like they may be quieter, but they're not going to be as full of life, or have might not have the same interests, honestly, because if they're into something like, for example, like soccer maybe, or building things, if they start to take a medicine and it's making them tired or making them less energetic, sorry, they may not want to play soccer, or they may just want to sit down and not go out and build things. So coexisting conditions, these are just some things that may also be seen if kids do have ADHD. So learning disabilities may come about. They may be slower at reading. They may not be able to sit still long enough to complete an assignment, things like that. Anxiety disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, Tourette syndrome, substance abuse, bedwetting problems, sleep disorders. All of these things may arise. So, okay, so then ADHD in girls is much different than ADHD in boys. Boys are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. So spotting ADHD in girls is much more difficult because they show it differently. So basically, all of these are some different ways that they may show that that they have ADHD, but it may be different than bouncing off the walls or running around and being loud. So these are like regular symptoms of ADHD that can be shown in everyone, and the coexisting conditions that may come with it. But as these may be shown in just girls, but they can also be shown in boys. It's just more common for them to be shown in girls. So basically, like being withdrawn, low self-esteem, anxiety, impairment in attention and attentiveness, daydreaming, verbal aggression. These may all be different symptoms that you may see in girls. And just because a girl does daydream, just like I said before, just because they daydream doesn't mean that they have ADHD. You have to really kind of know the student. You definitely need to know the student, actually, and know how they act. And, if there's something wrong, then kind of bring it to the attention of a parent, or, the school, kind of just make sure that that child is taken care of. So IDEA 2004 kind of covered ADHD in the other health impairment group. So basically, if the attention issues meet the law's standards for qualifying as a disability, then the team, like the school evaluation team, agrees that the attention issues impact the ability to learn, then they can begin the IEP process. But they need to make sure that that student reaches all of those, all the criteria. Otherwise, it doesn't fall under there. If the disability affects educational performance, then they definitely will go ahead and begin this IEP process. Another one that I didn't put on here is they could look at doing a 504 to help the child through. So basically, they just have to make sure that what they're doing is going to help the child, and if the child needs help that they're going through with it. So interventions. So these are some things that you can use in your classroom to help not only students with ADHD, but all students. So basically just making sure task duration, direct instruction, peer tutoring, scheduling, making sure that you have a schedule that makes sense and that you can follow throughout the day, and that the students know that schedule. Having structure and organization is always important in your classroom. Rule reminders and visual cues, as well as auditory cues, and the pacing of work. Don't try to stack things all on top of each other and have them doing 100 things at once. Instructions are always important. Productive physical movement can also get those. the students who are more hyperactive up and involved and moving around and kind of get some of that energy out of them. If, they're doing a Go Noodle or anything like that, that kind of gets them ready for the next task at hand and gets a little bit of that energy out so that maybe they can sit down and actually focus on that assignment or sit down and actually do those math problems or read that sentence. It just depends all on the student, honestly. But yeah, so these interventions can help in many different ways. And like I said, not only with students with ADHD, but they can help all students, especially if the student is showing a few signs of ADHD. These interventions will be able to work with them. So then there's my citations, and that is my presentation. Thank you.